Hi there, I'm Stefano. I'm the founder of Nucco, but today I'm here as basically just running the panel and asking questions to our amazing guests. So without further ado, let them introduce themselves. We have Arlette Ree and Hayley Selby that are going to present themselves. So we'll start with Arlette. You're on mute. Sorry, Arlette.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for dialing into this event this morning. And thanks very much, Stefano, for the opportunity. So I'm Arlette from Aravis, and we are a third-party fund marketing and introduction business, essentially a placement agent and the in-house marketing arm to selected clients that we represent. My background stems from working in investment management for 10 years. And then I decided to take a leap of faith and go off and move into the B2C world, and started up by having my own fashion business for 5 years. And then I decided that wasn't all I thought it would be. Grass wasn't necessarily greener. So I ended up having the opportunity to come to work for Aravis and head up all their marketing comms, and I've been here for 6 years now. So that brings me back to this opportunity here to discuss all things digital and content with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Arlette. And Hayley?
Hi. Thanks, Stefano and Nucco team for bringing together this event. It's a really interesting topic to me because I've worked at many businesses that look at writers and bringing together long form copy. But myself, I'm a global content specialist strategist. I've been in content marketing for many years now across B2C and B2B, more recently in a market intelligence business called GFK, leading with a platform supported by AI, and we brought together events, and was very, very lucky to work with the Nucco team who helped us out with that. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the presentation, and let's start with the question. So we have I'm going to just pose a question, then whoever wants to answer first goes first. We're going to start with something that is pretty broad, and then we're going to delve in and also try to weave in as many questions that come from the audience as possible in the process. So, we really know that there has been a very big shift from the traditional methods. And, from our point of view, of course, a lot of people talk about how COVID has changed everything. But, personally, I think that it has maybe more accelerated some change that was going to come in any case, like digitization. But, in broad strokes, we went from, especially in B2B, something that was so focused on, there are these live events where you make sure that a lot of people come, whether they're organized by you or you participate to. There is a lot of written words. There's plenty of blogs out there, and there's plenty of white papers, plenty of gated content. And then suddenly you have to deal with all the difference and different channels, and the fact that some of these ways of communicating don't exist anymore. So if you want to just start and say how B2B marketing has changed in the last 3 years in regards to the type of content and effective ways of sharing information, whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, I'll jump in if that's all right, Arlette.
Absolutely.
I think that, Stefano, you refer to the last year, 18 months. It's been extraordinary for all of us, but for some businesses, the likes of social media, especially LinkedIn for B2B, have not just become a channel in the way to reach businesses, but the only channel. And I think suddenly it certainly accelerated the use of this channel, but suddenly everyone had to become an expert on B2B digital marketing overnight on these channels. So, I think everyone dives in with how do we work with the algorithm? And that's where people tend to start, and they think that there's some magic behind the curtain. How do you use this channel? At the end of the day, it's about good content. And I think time and again, my work over the years has proven that, you know, you create great content for your audience, and it works better at the end of the day.
I think it's exactly to Hayley's point there. It's going back to the grassroots and identifying what works for your particular audience. So for us here, the last 2 years, personalized email marketing campaigns, which have been tailored for the specific audiences and demographics, that's what's been working for us. And it's more than just looking at the open and click rates. It's looking at the analytics of how afterwards, it's like the visual composition of those campaigns and the use of video, which we haven't been using until the last 2 years. So that for us has had a significant impact on our relations with clients, and it's really helps engage with them. So I think for us, the big shift has been video, having optimized websites, because everyone's on their mobiles now, and personalized content.
I think it's interesting because we get you know, it's almost like you have this type of considerations that are not new, but now they have to be real, you know. So if we went to a marketing event, say 3 years ago, we would have probably heard something about, oh yeah, personalization is important. But then it went from, as you were saying, Ellie, from important to now you really need to get down and do it and not just talk about it. And, you know, to that point, I find it quite interesting, especially in B2B, there is this, I think, over-reliance on text. And importantly, evidence-based comms, you know, you need to communicate the element of why you're good at doing what you're doing. But I think it's quite interesting how the digital environments, instead of encouraged to go very deep into a topic, you know, kind of forces you to be a little bit more superficial. You know, we know that the reading ability has changed. I always like to ask people, when is the last time that you spent 3 hours reading, you know, 3 hours in a row, you know, of deep reading. And just some scary stats there. You know, you have fewer than 10% of web visits going beyond 2 minutes. It means that people don't read for that long. And do you think that there is still a place for the written word? And importantly, is it worth writing those quite long articles, those white papers, those chunks of text in the same way that we might have used to do it when we were doing it, you know, handouts or similar bits?
Absolutely. I totally think there's a customer for the written word. And I know in the financial industry, depending on your department, the researchers, they're always reading the quarterly reports. Our clients are always calling us up. They're always looking forward to the quarterly letters. And I think it's offering people the choice of long form content or video or shorter content, because everyone has a different learning aptitude, and it's looking at where they are in the funnel and what we can do to deliver the service and move further down the cycle.
So there is a space, but is a different place of the funnel, right?
Yeah, and it's providing, we're all humans, and we need to humanize this connection and provide people with the choice, would be my take on it. I don't know, Hayley?
Yeah, I think what Arlette says, it still has a place, but you need to look at where that place is in the funnel. I mean, end to end, from the first time you engage with a potential, you know, prospect or customer, you're starting a story with them. You have to have the beginning of the story, you know, the middle and the end, you know, and you have to really assess at what point is this person going to be interested in the detail that I provide. And this is among strong competition out there. You know, if you're going to go out with a white paper and make a statement or a lengthy report and put a lot of time and effort into it, often very expensive written copy, anything that's worth somebody's time for that length of time, needs to be considered. At what point are they going to be engaging with you as a brand in putting out this paper, and the content within it? And I think what the conversion to almost solely, digital channels over the last 18 months has really meant that, and the limited time you have to interact with or reach customers and prospects, it means that you've really got to look at your USPs right at the beginning and surface them very, very, very quickly. Does that mean a lengthy report? Probably not at that point. And I think that long form copy, I agree with Arlette, somewhat in the fact that it still has a place. And in Arlette's reference to the funnel, it's a bit lower down for me. It's really once if you do a ton of work in establishing yourselves as a brand and what your USPs are, and get that point across very quickly, and just be consistent with those points. When you come further down the funnel, people are more engaged with your brand. They're more willing to spend more time with you and learn about what your specialisms are, and you can surface those in long form copy.
No, I think it's a great point, because it's pretty clear that somebody is, at the end of the day, as Arlette was saying, reading that content and reading it with attention. The point is, it's almost like we have to work more as marketers to get them, to that point, and not only work more, but work with different type of formats. So in that, I think it's a good segue to the point of what have you seen as a little bit of a shift or as an increase in the type of content? So we're saying long form content still exists, great, but is further down the line. What has been used or you've seen, utilized as a way to get people to that point? Would be great to see the different.
Well, I think as a content marketer, you really look at, we often use the phrase sweating the assets, and to me, the best way to work for your clients as well is to just have the overall message, let's call it hero content. For those that don't know the phrase hero content, but it's often what you spend the most money on, but not always. But it's the piece that you're really going out with that has the broadest reach, that has the most eyes on. That's, perhaps what you're putting the most page behind, but it really does reach, the most amount of people for whatever you're doing on that occasion and in context. But to use an example, more recently, we did a launch event at GfK, worked together with the team on the launch event for a new product called GfK Neuron, which is an artificial intelligence-backed market intelligence platform for our clients. And, you've really got to look at, forgetting for a moment all of the sort of personas, the segmentation, the existing clients that you're reaching. But there is the hero event itself. So that was the hero asset at this stage. But we worked very hard behind the scenes in grabbing every piece of content we could that supported, that event and lent itself to more evergreen content going out. But mostly all of that was shorter form articles, messaging wrapped around behind the scenes videos. And to me, video plays a really key part, but especially when you're surfacing expertise. If people want to engage with experts, they want to listen to what experts are saying, increasingly in this world where we've become more and more siloed because of the recent events, you want to engage with peers, experts, even if it's only to confirm your findings and what your strategies are. And I think video plays a key part in that, as well as other assets, animations. But I really do think that video plays a key part at the moment.
I absolutely agree with Hayley. I recently read in the Cisco report that by 2022, 80% of all online traffic is going to be generated through video. So, 2022, next year. For us in the financial industry, we didn't, as I previously said, ever really use much video content, but now we are using that, and we're using it, as Hayley had said, on a surface level as a warm up to connect with those prospects, and we're having conversations with other fund managers, then using that content into shorter clips to disseminate it in our other marketing collateral. And we really find that is working, and it's actually speeding up the process through the cycle for us, because they're getting a quicker connection to the managers than they would have before when we didn't ever use video.
So you're seeing that it's also appreciated. I think that that's an interesting question to see. You deal with people that are very different age groups, and of course, you maybe take a look at what's happening, and on one side you have the TikTok and that word, but on the other side you're dealing with, I think especially in B2B there is this vibe of seriousness and the element of if I don't create content that looks worthy or serious enough, I won't be taken, into consideration by these people. Do you see that somebody that might have, let's say, considered this beneath them, or like a gimmick, or something that was not the right type of content, changing their mind? Maybe they have a age 50 plus or something like that, and seen that shift.
We haven't really. We've seen everyone move with the times and be quite agile in our client base, and the shift we're seeing now is that everything has opened up. People are wanting to go back to having the in-person meetings, and they're having the mix of both virtual and in person, because that is helping them along the way.
And Ellie, would you add a little bit of an experience there with that shift?
I think I grabbed some figures, before we started recording and started this panel discussion, but there's figures to say, so there's now 25 million companies across the world are taking advantage of Instagram for business. And at GfK, we started a very successful Instagram channel. And I think more businesses are adopting, there's far more millennials now working in B2B, and we are laying the foundation for Gen Z, coming up. And these people engage more, without a doubt, engage more with multiple channels on a daily basis. So even if you're not present on these channels, for a start, if you're not present on these channels, how can you test whether people are engaging with them or not? So even if it's worth just investing, just to be present, just to see how your customer engages with that, customer prospects engage with new channels. But I do think age is just a figure. It's everyone's got a job to do, and you can be any age doing that job. And I think the more we add a criteria, yes, you're persona mapping, you're segmenting, but the more we add a criteria around that kind of person in a B2B sense, the more we reduce the audience type, and the more, yes, there is a certain element of personalization, but is that more around the role rather than the person, sitting behind that role? And we can, just in a biased way say, well, the average 50-year-old doesn't spend time on TikTok. Don't they? Do we have some hard facts around that? Do the people that make these key business decisions, at the end of the day, they've got kids. I've got a 12-year-old and he spends an awful lot of time on TikTok, and other views about that on another day. But I have to keep an eye on him. So he's often showing me things on TikTok, and I'm not saying we should surface a business ad in the middle of, him viewing something probably about a cat or an influencer or Fortnite, but your eyes are everywhere. And, to actually suggest that B2B is old, stuffy, does not welcome emotive-based content that's exciting and fresh is a very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I heard one of my favorite quotes. I wish I knew who said it, because I could credit him, but it was like, being serious is no excuse for being dull, just because the topic that you're dealing with is a very serious one. And, to that point, I guess that the next part is like more on the practical element of maybe, tips and tricks. I think that you sort of touched upon it, Haley, a little bit about using as many of the new things that are available for you, and that's always a good thing. Maybe I'll let you want to start with it. It's like, basically, how have you seen the telling a narrative, telling a story in such short amount of time, and with that short attention span is challenging. But what have you seen that works out there? Is the question. It's quite broad.
Sure. Well, so for us, because a lot of our focus has been on video content, we basically decided we had to look at the best webinar software which we could use as an interactive tool to get across our message with the clients. And once we'd gone and vetted numerous systems, we obviously selected the one with the most interaction and analytics behind it, so that we can then use the video content from that and create articles from it, pull that video through into shorter clips, use the LinkedIn channels to disseminate the information. And LinkedIn has featured a lot in the workplace, as we've seen that people who are using the video content from these webinars that we generate, they're gaining a high impression rate, and it's just worked really well for us. It's been accessible. I feel it's just been about being accessible and going back to the whole point of giving people the choice.
I think choice is, really hitting the nail on the head there. When you serve content, you serve it in all ways, but there's a push and a pull. So hero assets, you're often pushing towards people with broad reach, but you've also got to have content that people pull. And at GfK, we were working hard behind the scenes on the YouTube channel in optimizing it, and just make sure we're positioning all of the content so that people can reach it easily, and setting chapters in places to surface against sort of SEO and etc. So working hard on the detail to make sure you're optimizing the formats is also key, I think. But I think going back to what Arlette mentioned earlier on, which I'm a massive believer in, it is humanizing content, and also humanizing it in the context of what you're doing. I think all too often we behave like experts who are speaking with experts, and we're drowning in our own expertise, and we just sometimes forget that every now and then we're reaching people who are not experts, and actually all they want to know is, what do you do? What does this damn thing do? How do I use it? And if you bury that in going back to what we were saying earlier, in long form copy or content that's hard to reach or to get hold of, they'll give up. They're fickle, and they will give up without a doubt.
I love this, Haley. I'm going to put it somewhere on my wall. It's like drowning in expertise. This idea of people that at the end of the day, I think it talks to the vanity of our, at the end of the day, if we don't allow ourselves to have an honest conversation, and even with the content we create, then people get entrenched into their persona that they want to project online, rather than actually being genuinely interested. And in a way, I think that the biggest problem there is that B2B marketers very often take a look at what their competition is doing, rather than what their potential customers actually want. I've seen people so obsessed by whatever, you know, XYZ the competitor is doing, and rather than trying to focus on the customer. And you know, that's never an easy thing to sort of lose as an habit. But I think that is quite interesting. The point that you made about choice, you know, the fact that there is so much out there. And you know, I'm going to start with Ailey just because you have, you know, clearly that level of expertise. But when you have this idea of infinite choice, you can read everything, you know, and you're so afraid of maybe missing on that one nugget of good stuff into the sea of irrelevance. Have you found that maybe a little bit more targeted messaging on, say, LinkedIn, as you were mentioning, has become useful? Or how do you deal with that aspect of like, I'm just one part of the noise? And then, you know, Arlette, if you want to afterwards give your impressions, that would be great.
Well, I think if you let's look at an ideal world, which often doesn't exist, and often I'm trying to sort of build for businesses, which is you've got your beautiful end-to-end you know, journey, customer journey, all mapped out, you know, where your customers are and prospects are, what they're doing at any given time, how they're engaging with your brand, and then how they convert towards the end. You know, if you've got that, you can place content along the way where they're going to be, knowing, you know, that they're going to engage with that content at that point, and it's going to move them down the funnel to the next stage. You know, if we've got all of this in place, then everything works. It's great, but often we haven't got all of this in place, and we strive to have all of this in place, but it's incremental. We have to do this bit, test that bit, did that work, move them on, did that work? You have to look at segments of the funnel. You know, quite often I think, and I will surface this, that a lot of B2B marketers, you know, businesses who are in the area of B2B rather than B2C, they look at conversion at the end. That, you know, they look at MQLs, conversion of MQLs to SQLs, and this is it. There's no join up, you know, to the rest of the funnel, and that's missing a huge amount of opportunity. But messaging, yes, is key. Messaging is key if you know your audience. If you know your audience at that point, and you know what messaging will resonate with them, then fire away. You know, go for it. You really need to know whom you are targeting at that point. But more recently, what I have been looking at is what I call key evaluation content, which is surfacing content against longer form queries. You know, our search engines are a lot more intelligent nowadays. And if you put in, I'm sure we all do it, right? Instead of just putting in 3 words into a search engine, we can say how or what or who, and then 10 words go in, and up comes, you know, the right content. As a business, how do you look at answering that query? How do you look at answering that long form query that, you know, and it's often around evaluation. So I find that in a B2B world, more often than anywhere else, you know, in B2C, certainly, people want answers to the questions before they even look at moving to the next stage, you know, down the funnel. But what they're really seeking to do is evaluate your product or service for their business. And if you aren't giving them that information, if you aren't giving them the content that allows them to evaluate this so they can confidently take it back into the business and say, I've evaluated this, it will do X, Y, Z for us. I know because here's all the content that says it, and here's the case studies. So, you know, for me, it's about evaluation, and rather than, you know, yes, messaging, but if you know your consumer or customer or prospect, message them, great. But it's about looking at the long form and evaluation.
Awesome, thanks. Arlette, any consideration on that aspect of like choice and making sure that?
Well, I think it's going back to what we've spoken about, offering the choice through webinars, live events, podcasts, the audio element, white papers, because everyone has these different learning aptitudes. So I think that is crucial, because I even see here that People are now starting to read the trade publications more. They're tired, they're just exhausted from looking at everything on screen all the time. So they're adapting to how they're going to download all the information.
I think that you made a very interesting point about this idea of, I found it really funny. Yesterday, I saw this post about how much screen time off you should have, and of course it was presented to me on a screen, and the fact that it is actually elongating our retinas and doing like a very biological difference in what we're doing, and that element, as you say, are led to providing sort of a spin or similar content in different ways, so that anybody can choose what their favorite format is. Something that is very often, I think, underestimated by marketers or brands that live and breathe their own product and communication so much that they don't get the fact that repetition helps, and that there is an element of making it available in as many ways as possible from a number of people, and at the end of the day, I think the podcasters do it well. I've seen so many that are like, okay, I'm going to do a video version of this thing, and then you can find the edited down version on the Spotify podcast, and then you can find some highlight of the quarter somewhere else, and they're not afraid of reusing, as you were saying, Haley, like as wetting their assets. But for some reason, very often I find this conversation is like, oh, we already said that. It's like, you said it once in a passing by post 7 months ago. It's like, it's a good thing to repeat it. People don't follow you so religiously that you cannot afford that aspect. And I'm conscious of time. We have just a little bit of questions that are specific, to you guys. And I'm going to ask one to Arlette that is about, as you were mentioning, there is this aspect of webinar fatigue. It's very real. People, come to events like this, but they got, for example, the Nucco ones got shorter and shorter because I've noticed that when it's like 1 hour and a half, we tend to lose viewers. So we made it 45 minutes, and that works well for us. But have you, you're just one click away, right? Even people that are listening to us in this very moment, they can decide to, click on another tab, and that's them lost. Do you have any kind of tips or consideration about stopping your audience for clicking off? What has worked well for you, as a way to engage them? Both, I would say.
What works for us, sorry, Stefano, is working with a webinar software which has the ability to customize it with all the brand identity, as we represent a number of clients. So it's all carrying through their brand integrity and having very strong visuals, a very strong about the webinar, what it's about, posing a question to the audience, just as you have today is a written word per se. So I feel when you're asking a question to the audience, they're more likely to think about it, and it just makes them a bit more curious than it being just bog standard, like Q3 update kind of thing. So I think it's key messaging and the visuals, which are the way to get people to click. And then obviously it needs to be easy access, because people are traveling, they're on their mobiles. We've seen a 20% shift of people accessing webinars through iOS devices. So, and that's in the last quarter. And if your software isn't compatible, for example, Zoom in the financial industry is blocked by a lot of the banks in the UK and France. So we had to scrap that software and make sure we're working with something which works with the marketplace.
It's very interesting because, Nucco being it's such a, we have a number of financial clients, as you know, and at the moment we basically have every single communication tool on this earth, whether that's the Microsoft Teams one, and inevitably there is the one that is blocked, as you say, and it's something to take into account. I think this is a very fascinating thing because we're dealing with the difference between this, that everybody has in their hands, and is the latest one, and we love to have that level of new technology, versus the typical company issue Dell with Internet Explorer still, and how do you make this two reconcile, and that is not working, I think, incredibly well for the B2B industry as a whole. To the point that we have seen a lot of our online events where people sign up with their own personal email, whether it's like Gmail or things like that,
Right.
to avoid the pain of going through firewalls and things like that. But that is very difficult, because how do you connect the lead, who do these people work for, and similar bit. So I think it's quite an interesting space, how to make them feel.
I would just say that would be the key takeaway I'd hope people would take, is makes sure whichever software you're using, it works in your industry, and if it's a regulated industry, well, really do your due diligence.
Yeah, and you need to deal with it. I think that is it's one of those things where we might all well and good talk about these elements, and then you have the thing that is like, oh, but this, we recently had a contract that asked us to do something for Opera. You remember Opera? It's been discontinued, I think, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That was the requirement. I think that we have time for just a couple of questions that are coming from the audience. So an interesting one is this idea. We covered compliance, I guess, to a degree, but it will be interesting to see how what level of compliance you had to deal with, and how do you navigate the need for speed if you want to produce content at a certain speed, and instead the fact that very often there is a compliance wall there. Any insights there?
I think probably I'll let from working in the financial industry is there must be a ton of it, and it adds to the speed at which you can move through the content production process. It's always something that you have to have in the back of your mind and navigate through, but I think if you know what steps you need to take ahead of time, that probably helps. It would be interesting to hear what Arlette's comes across, on a daily basis, and the barriers and how you certainly navigate that. I'm
It's
sure
totally, as you've just touched on, Hayley, it's like building it into your project management, and when you're putting together your social media strategy or your email campaigns, etc. If you're working with third parties and you're going to have to disseminate the information and make sure it's all proofed, you just have to build in that buffer time, and more often than not build in a week, not 3 days, which is what we've been finding.
One thing that to answer that question that we found useful is that a lot of the times compliance is very hell-bent on words, but they're more lenient on visuals. So we always try to put, let's say, the things that you want to say, but maybe it's a little bit more contentious to say, more in a visual context, because at the end of the day, there is the element of being signed off as a sentence or something like that. It can be the voiceover or the text on it, but there is a lot that you can infer and suggest visually speaking, or utilizing infographics, and that's normally something that doesn't get so heavily scrutinized. So to whoever asked that question, there is that element there. And we have time for one last one, and it's just about the aspect of, you know, I know that this might take ages, but like success, you know, like the KPI of content, and how do you make sure that you're doing sort of a good job? We're often asked as an agency, you know, what are the KPIs and that you have demonstrated, and you know, the best ones that we have are with clients that have worked with us for a longer span of time, because there is an iterative quality to content out there. So just from the inside, in a way, how do you deal with that, with the aspect of like, okay, I need to see a result versus I need to invest on this? Maybe starting with Aileen and with Arlette.
I think, you know, it's as a content marketer, one of the key things, again, that a lot of businesses do not properly have in place and need to invest in my opinion, is attribution models. Because how can you measure the success of the content and where it's positioned in the funnel if you're not attributing the measurement or the metric to that point in the funnel where you've served that content? So to me, attribution modeling is key. You know, if you work on last click all the time, you will only ever know how successful that last piece of content was in the journey, and you're not gathering where this client or prospect first engaged with you. So you see this a lot with gated content. So coming full circle to what we began talking about, which is longer form content, often it's gated. And I think there's a sense of apathy among clients and prospects with, here we go, fill in the same old form again. They've already got my details. I've already been here. Where's the personalization? It's off-putting. Yes, they register as an MQL, big tick for the marketing organization or the agency. But coming back to KPIs, I think what's really solid to begin with, if businesses haven't got that end-to-end journey, haven't got that attribution modeling in place and a measurement framework, all of these things are key to building successful content and optimizing it. But if all those things are not in place, the one thing to measure really against a piece of content is the click-through. Have they clicked through to somewhere? Have they gone on to do something? It's not always the be all and end all, because they could have engaged with that piece of content, or in the case of video or an event, they could have watched it, participated, whatever, and then done nothing until 6 months' time. But without that information joining that up, the most immediate KPI you can put against a piece of content, in my opinion, is a click-through. And I know in our panel preparation, where we had this conversation, we spoke about the phrase InFOMO, which is a fear of missing out on information. And this should be key when you're creating a piece of content, especially in the B2B world. Leave the audience knowing that the more that they engage with your brand, the more they'll get to know, the more information they will find out that's critical to the success of what their plans are, their strategies. So yeah, I would say, the click-through is the thing.
And that's exactly what we spend a lot of our time measuring, and also the conversion rate from these events. We've seen, similar to what you highlighted at the beginning of the presentation, UBS's new event format and the conversion against the benchmark. We found as well, by looking at the KPIs, that we've 65% conversion rate, and it's looking at the analytics all the time and dissecting it to see what did and didn't actually work, and where that lead went to, the follow through. And I think Hayley explained it with her expertise, the whole attribution model.
Yeah, I find that it's very interesting how ultimately the connection is needed there, between the marketers and the brand internally and externally, to have that as a real KPI. And if at a certain point within that chain something is not talking, to each other, then it becomes almost impossible to do that. So it's way more of a collaboration issue than a results issues, at least in my experience. I'm afraid of running out of time, but always a good sign when you have 7 or 8 unanswered questions. It means that there's plenty of interest on your side. I just wanted to thank both you, Arlette and Haley, for sharing your expertise. You've been amazing. So much good stuff that came out of this talk, and I hope to host you again for one of these events. And thank you so much for the attendees, and I hope you to see on another Nucco event very soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you.